A knee specialist. A one-trick pony, right? Not at the Christ Hospital Health Network. We have integrated specialists for every area of orthopedic surgery, like perfecting your golf swing again, night strolls with your partner, or walking your daughter down the aisle. Everything it takes to get your life back. We specialize in that too. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This podcast, episode 785, Navigating Fear and Change in Fitness with Matt Kasee.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. Before I get into my fabulous returning guest, Matt Kasee from Trilogy Fitness Systems, I want to tell you about my fabulous friend Sarah from Team Fit With Me, both who were at my Pound This party in August. And Sarah is a health coach extraordinaire. If you're looking for somebody that's going to teach you all about macros, nutrition, kind of look at labs, break things down if you have gut health issues or if you have hormonal issues, Sarah is like the master. Like we saw at my Pound This party, like just people randomly asked her questions about like their gut health and hormones, and she just rattled it off as if she's been studying this thing since birth. She is amazing. If you're looking for somebody to be a virtual health coach, kind of teach you through that, whether you want to strength train or you just want to get stronger or you want to lose weight or you just want to live a healthier lifestyle, go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis to save 10% off of your first month of all packages and plans. And speaking of Sarah and the Team Fit With Me crew, I know a few of the women that are being coached by Sarah have tried Clean Eats in Newport, which again, it all ties back to my Pound This party in August. So if you know me, which if you're listening to this, you probably do, I'm an avid meal prepper. I've been meal prepping for about 8, 9, I guess, oh my God, maybe coming up on 10 years now. And I'm like, I am not going to meal prep after this event. I'm not going to cook. I know myself. So I tried Clean Eats in Newport, Kentucky, which is here in Cincinnati. And it was fantastic. So there's like a whole wall of frozen meals. I just went and grabbed a bunch of stuff to get me through half of the week, and it was fantastic. And I'm like, you know what? I want more of this. So I am going back to Clean Eats. And full disclosure, at the time of recording this, I'm about to go into my first week of just ordering the meal prep for the week. And so I can go right online, go to cleaneats.com. I choose my location, which is Newport. If you're here in Cincinnati, you can also choose Westchester if you're closer to Westchester. And you can order all of your food for the week, and all of your macros are broken down, all of the obviously very clean ingredients, your calories, and just order your meals for the week if you want them fresh, which is what I'm doing. I'm picking them up tomorrow, and then I'm going to have them for the entire week. So I am personally, because I eat 5 meals a day, I'm going to use 3 of their meals a day and then to make 2 of my own to kind of figure out my own macros from there. So I'm super excited to not cook. The food is delicious. If you're looking to make life a little bit easier, you can head to Clean Eats in Newport or, make sure, or in Westchester, follow them both on Instagram and go to cleaneats.com and find your location, whether that is Newport or Westchester. Are you a meal prepper, Matt? Have you ever done any meal prepping, or I guess in the way that I do it of like kind of like batch cook ahead of time?
Yes, I do big time meathead stuff. I'll just throw a couple pounds of ground beef in a pan and saute it up and roast a bunch of veggies and change seasonings, all that kind of stuff. I've used a couple different servers in the past. Like I have a couple friends who have done it before, and the efficiency of it is vital. And I think people are trying to make those long-term nutrition shifts. You need to meal prep. Like you need to have those easy options to make it easier to make the right choice. Right choice being quotation marks there.
Yeah. I think it's just being prepared. I just had a coaching call with one of my nutrition clients that I'm working with yesterday, and she's just like, when I'm eating well, just refueling her body. Again, it's not like, oh, I have to do chicken, rice, and broccoli. It's it's the foods that are fueling her body, which we've talked a lot about macros, of like having a good balance between your protein and your carbs and your fats at every time you eat. And fueling your body in that way of like, hey, if you're going to snack, don't just snack on pretzels. Like, let's throw like some peanut butter in there, maybe throw a beef jerky stick in there. Like, again, it doesn't have to be this insane, I'm eating just hard-boiled eggs in protein powder. Like, it's, you give yourself just a balance of those things. And she's like, when I'm doing that, I feel awesome. So our big
So
thing that
much better.
we've worked on is just her energy. She's just like not necessarily weight loss. She's just like she has an extremely important busy job, and she's like, I need to have energy for it. And I'm like, then we need to just fuel your body so we have energy. But she's like, it's the preparation part. She's like, when I'm doing it, I'm awesome. I'm rocking on all cylinders. And she's like, and then I don't prep or just plan ahead. And she's like, and then I will just go eat cookies and do all of these things. And she's like, then I just feel sluggish and gross. And I go into the spin of telling yourself that you suck at this. And of course you fail. So I think of just having a plan and a preparation, which is good, which I told her when we had our conversation yesterday. I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to throw you a sales pitch here, but I'm like, I'm getting my meal prep this week from Clean Eats. If you want to just go check them out, and maybe there's just some meals you can grab and just try that out of having that prepared meal. At least for me, like if you're going to grab a frozen meal, I'd rather have one that's made locally and you understand the ingredients rather than just getting a lean cuisine, which I think those suck and they never fill me up. Of like getting something like that if you need a convenient meal and seeing if you can incorporate that into your weekly planning of what you're going to do instead of, oh, I'm going to make a pot roast this night and I'm going to make the lasagna this night, and then life happens and you go to make the lasagna and you're exhausted and it's 7 p.m. and you're like, nah, we're ordering pizza.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Taking away the barriers to make it easier is vital for it. Like that meal prep stuff gives you all of that. And life is going to happen every single day, sometimes more chaotic than others. And yeah, you're not going to always make the optimal choice that you want to for your goals, we'll call it. And yeah, so having those things, especially if you can have when it's local, when it's fresh, and as you said, our friend Emily, who's been on the podcast before, Mobley, like that balanced plate actually fulfills you, nourishes you, and sustains you, and you feel so much better. Like you can do so much more with it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, I think we all just think of like restrictive. And I think that we go bouncing from food to fitness, it's like we also go into, I have to beat the hell out of myself to consider that exercise. We go into, oh, I'm either like I'm hitting it hard and I'm going to boot camp 5 days a week, or it becomes nothing. So it becomes like this weird balance between like we go into this all or nothing thing with movement as well as food. And I think because we get into that, which is one of the reasons I wanted to discuss this topic, where it came up for me of like people just feel lost, and I guess finding that nice balanced middle ground, especially. I know for me at the Y that there's people coming into our gym all the time and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like I am, they just feel so lost. So they're like, I will go and I'll gravitate towards the elliptical and a treadmill because I understand that. But then I just kind of live there and I'm not really like getting any results. I'm not really getting any joy out of it because I feel like this like lostness and fear of trying these other things, of one, looking stupid, of hurting yourself, of not knowing what's going on. And I feel like I have definitely been there and I still get there of like, that's just such a barrier. One, in nutrition, which is a whole nother discussion, which we're going to talk about movement right now, though, but especially in a gym of like, oh, if I go to a boot camp, people will bark at me what to do, and then I can understand what fitness is. But if I'm going to be on my own and I need to figure out how do I gain strength and how do I do this, like it just feels like it kind of falls apart, and a lot of people choose to do nothing or learn it because of feeling lost or having fear, than going through a process of doing it, where I know, at least for me at the Y, the couple people that I've had time to like sit down and have a conversation with, of like, well, let me show you everything and let me write you, like, think about how you want to build out a half-hour routine while you're in here, and let's go through it and let's make sure you feel comfortable with it. And I feel like that makes such a huge difference. And I imagine that that's what you see all the time of people coming into Trilogy.
100%. Like every time people come into and then that's kind of our niche in our gym, is kind of this more of a beginner person or person that has not found something they've enjoyed that they can keep doing for a long time. So when we've had these people come in, it's always this perfectionism that they're seeking, and then they end up overanalyzing and freezing and not doing anything. Or they're jumping on, like you said, the elliptical, and this will be what I do because I'm doing cardio and I'm sweating and I'm burning calories, rather than thinking about it as like improving and building themselves, We have this warped mentality of the seeking perfection, and then we always look at fitness as a punishment versus something that we can just do because we can, and it'll make our life easier and better as we go.
So what would your advice be for someone? I mean, obviously your advice would be like, come to Trilogy and we'll help you. But if like somebody, especially if you're not in Cincinnati and you're listening to this, of like, I'm going to walk into a fitness center, whether that's your home gym or, in, the wellness center that you go to or a big box gym, of like, where do you go? Like, you're just like, listen, I just want to get a good strength. I want to get a good total body workout. Like, what do I even start? Like, how do I even do this?
So when I talk to people, well, one, there's so many great programs you can find on the internet. But if they're not looking for that, it is just break the movements down to kind of the simple foundational movements. So we squat, we hinge, which is a deadlift, we lunge, we push, we pull, and we carry. Like, those are kind of the foundational exercises. And from there, we just pick a few of them every time you go to the gym. You can do one of each, and it's a complete total body workout. It's balanced. You'll feel good. You don't have to think about much more than that. The row doesn't matter whether it's a machine or a dumbbell or a TRX or whatever. Just jump in, pick a row, and have fun with it. Pick a push and have fun with it.
Well, and I think that's, again, where the internet is. If you're like listening to this and you're like, well, what does that even mean? Just look up push exercises, or think you're pushing like a chest press, or you think of like a pull exercise. It's a row. And that's where, again, I have the same methodology. And then I just talk about, think about you're working the front of your body and the back of your body. And thinking about, where you're working your quads, but then you're working your hamstrings, or you're working your chest, but you're also working your back. I'm thinking of like a total body workout, because the average person isn't going in there doing bodybuilding splits. Although I used to do that and I love that.
Every meathead secretly loves like a body part split.
I do. And if I haven't done it in forever, that's where it's like, I know I love it, but I also just haven't. It is a time commitment. Like, you're going to have to go to the gym like 5 days a week if you're going to do splits like that, which most people don't have the ability to, or to get the enjoyment out of not, I feel like doing that too is also so, I can't think of a better word other than like loner activity. Where I think so many people like fitness, like go to a place like Trilogy because of community, because you can have conversations, you make friends, you have your crew, there's competitions. Like, I feel like where I'm at it in my journey right now, I feel like I'm extremely thirsty for that part. I feel like so much of the fitness that I've done, especially going through COVID and everything, was so lonely. And I feel like even now when I go to the Y and work out for myself, it just feels, I feel like unmotivated currently, because I'm kind of just going through the motions, and I just kind of feel like alone in it. And I'm like, I'd rather have like a scene where we're all kind of here and you're kind of making friends and you're doing that. So I feel like a lot of people find their motivation or find their love within fitness, within finding the other people that are attached to that movement, rather than just going and deadlifting by yourself. That's my feeling anyway.
You're right with it, because it shows. We always assume and think that we are stuck in this by ourselves, and that we're the only ones going through this thing. I'm the only one that feels scared and intimidated in the gym, but we all go through it, self included. Like, years ago, I was working at a gym, and I was jokingly referred to as like the chubby trainer. And I was like, thinking to myself, I'm like, does this lady realize the mind F that she's giving everybody else in here right now? Like,
right.
So it just keeps it silos, and it makes people lonely and scared. And then they have that seeking of perfection, and then they have the overwhelming life around them of their job and kids and relationships and all the other things that tie into it. And then they think lifting is bodybuilding, lifting is powerlifting. I need to be in there 5 days a week, 2 hours a week doing burpees and killing myself, rather than, hey, I'm going to start small. I'm going to do something sustainable. I'm going to do 5 exercises, get my total body. I'm going to do it 2 times a week, or 1 time a week if you're doing none. And finding this small, sustainable pattern. And then trying to find friends in that community. If you have a friend that you can go with, grab a friend, right? Take your bestie and go work out together. Join a gym that has a cool community. There's different types all over the place, but that community and that fun aspect and starting small will help people do it far longer and with a lot of that stress taken away.
Well, for people that have not heard you on this podcast before, retell me the story of how you got into fitness. And go start from how you got into it, and then also like everything that you've done and accomplished in fitness.
Yeah, so I started because I had a bad hand injury. I can't fully close my left hand. And my grandpa at the time was jacked. He had polio. I remember him just having these huge arms. So between that and pro wrestling, I was like, I'm going to become a beefcake because I'm a nerdy kid that gets picked on. So then my hand injury, and I realized, why doesn't my hand work? So I was going to go to school for physical therapy, started doing all that. And I realized, this isn't for me. So working as a trainer, went on and slowly developed Trilogy over the years. But where I kind of try to meet clients with is finding exercise to meet them where they are, but I also will put myself into situations to scare myself. Like I've done a bodybuilding competition, I've ran a marathon, I've done a jiu-jitsu competition. Like I do these things to kind of show like, yeah, I get beat up by girls at jiu-jitsu. Who cares if you can't do a goblet squat right? I'm a 220-pound guy, you know? There's all these type of things. So
how did your bodybuilding competition go?
Years ago.
Like, did you win?
No. I was in college. I came in like 4th or 5th out of 8 or something like that.
Gotcha.
It was not very good.
So, like, show me, like, so how did you get into where now that you teach exercise science, you own a gym, like, how did that all progress?
So that all started, I got thrust into gym ownership, and the gym ownership came by surprise. The guy that was running the gym said, I don't do this anymore. And I had a full client base and a part-time employee. So working as a trainer, I decided I enjoy it. I can do this. So run with it. And I wanted to provide a place for like, dorks like me to become jacked and hopefully kind of make people want to feel strong and capable.
Do you feel like you've done that?
Yeah. It's so fun. Like I've got my 3-legged dog that hops around the gym. I've got boys all over the place and wrestlers sitting in the gym, and it's fun seeing people who have never lifted. We had a lady who just started a few months ago. She started with a 25-pound kettlebell for deadlifts, and she came into the office after workout like so excited because she lifted 80 pounds.
That's awesome.
And I was on cloud 9 for the rest of the night with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it's funny. I was just in a conversation maybe a week, 2 weeks ago with somebody that also works in the fitness industry that was like, because I said something about you, and then I'm like, that's awesome. And they're like, why do you like that gym? Like, what's the selling point here? And again, like, I don't work for you. I whatever. And I'm like just fangirling where I'm like, I went to this gym just as, I'm like, I want to try this out. I had a lot of fears around group personal training because, again, like I kind of gravitate towards the loner thing. Even though I have this very outward extroverted personality, I'm very deeply introverted. And I would so it's like I have this war with myself between like wanting to be like alone, nobody look at me, but also everyone look at me. And so, and I'm like, I went in there, and after, just even working in a gym and all of the experiences that I've had through my own journey, I'm like, it's the most welcoming, fun place. Like just other people that were in there working out were just like, hey, you're new here. What's your name? Like, what's your name? What are you doing? Mm-hmm. Oh, hi. And I'm like, it's not like they're paid actors you had in there to come in there and just like have conversations with like newbies in the gym. It was just the most like welcoming, not only with the trainers, but it was just the vibe of like, this is a community and everybody in here is like working hard, and there's different ages and everybody is different sizes, and everybody is in there and they're having fun, and that you're having conversations with everybody, and there's like silliness, and it's not this like meathead, get your ass beat sort of feeling. And also I like that I subscribe to your newsletter, that I feel like you put out good information that shows that you deeply care about the people like your story you just told. Like it's not like, hey, I hit this financial goal, high five me. It's like, no, this person came in and they lifted heavier, and I'm so proud, and that's so amazing. And I think that's finding spaces like that of like, no, like you are a community, you are cared about. We're trying to like build you up better, which I think is really super cool. Which I feel like, again, going back to the topic of fear and like, how do I build this out and I'm lost? It's just kind of finding those places for you that you go in, and you're going to feel a difference between a place where you feel welcomed and you belong versus like, oh, everybody's watching me. They're like, she's going to try to do that, or just like this, like the judgment zone, or it just doesn't work with you. And I feel like there's so many times that you go into those places that you're not a good fit, and you just write everything off instead of trying to find, no, there's a place that you belong to somewhere, but you're going to have to do some, just kind of like dating or anything else. Like you're going to have to do some experimenting and do some research and kind of bounce around a little bit till you find the right fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, community is kind of like the buzzword that gets thrown around, because everyone's like, oh, my gym has community. My gym has community.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it looks good on Instagram, looks good on the website. But when you come in and you can see a place where people actually care about each other, like you experience with people, like, hey, you're new, welcome, kind of thing. Like that happens every time somebody comes in, and it makes you so happy.
Yeah.
Like when you actually show up and support people for their events, and they talk about them, and they care. So it's kind of fun to see, like, we deeply give a shit about our people, but then the people in there give a shit about each other too, which makes it just so much fun for me to see. Of like, there's so many friendships now of people who've never met until they, worked out together at 3:00 on a Tuesday kind of thing. And it's really cool to see, like, oh, that's going to help them do this forever, because we need to squat and do things forever so we can age gracefully. And it's so fun to me to see, like, oh, that friendship's going to help them do this for just a little bit longer. And they're going to have a little bit more fun and enjoyment. And that's kind of the kicker for it. Of if you can enjoy it and have fun, you're going to do things more.
Oh, for sure. And just even to kind of go off side tangent here, bringing up like, we're going to squat forever. I've had so many people be like, oh, I don't do squats. Of like, do you get off the couch? And do you go to the bathroom? Of like, yep, no, these are like movements. And even like when me having some of my own clients of like, we're just sitting up and sitting down. I'm like, you're squatting right now. And it's like how, again, we put fitness in its own box of a squat is what you envision some buff person in a gym doing. Of like, no, we're all squatting to our own degree every day, which is why it's important to get that healthy pattern down so you can continue to get off the couch and up and down off the toilet.
Yes. We have some people like, oh, this hurts. I'm like, it hurts a little bit and it feels uncomfortable because you haven't done this in years.
Yeah.
But we have to, like you said, you're going to be going to the bathroom multiple times a day for the rest of your life. We need to make sure that we can actually move in those directions.
So one of the things is what we were going to talk about, not only like not having that fear of going into a gym, but and also the consistency, like we talked about with food. I feel like this is a time of year where everybody's schedules are kind of like thrown off. We're going back to school. We're transitioning from summer into fall. We're going into football season, and we're going into holidays, and we're going into this like, oh, we're not worried so much about like moving and whatever. Now we'll worry about that in January.
Yep.
So what would your like recommendation or advice for this time period, for this season of the year, to kind of like keep yourself on or build a structure or kind of do something healthy for yourself here?
I think the first is to kind of realize and normalize that the schedules will shift seasonally, and that the focus is going to shift a little bit seasonally. So like now there's with a lot of the moms we have in the gym, like they have now school drop off they didn't have to deal with. So they're a little more on a time crunch, or they're having to take their kid home on a sick day, or they have soccer practice now. Like the seasons change and it's normal. I think a lot of people kind of forget to expect them, and then they're thrown through the loop once they hit. And like, oh, it's not perfect. The situation's not perfect right now. Well, maybe if we're going to a Bengals game on Sunday and we have a kid's soccer practice Tuesday, Thursday, maybe you're only working out structured twice a week instead of 3 times a week for a little while. And that is A-okay, because it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And kind of for realizing that it's okay to have these ebbs and flows is really important. So kind of still making yourself a priority is huge. And that, yeah, maybe not perfect right now. I'm not doing 4 days, but I can get my 2 days in. I'm going to make sure I schedule and keep my calendar clear on, Wednesday after work and Monday morning, whatever the days you pick might be, but kind of keeping some form of movement as an anchor and prioritizing yourself will go a long way. And then realizing that there's going to be another shift coming in 2 months when the holidays hit, and then another shift coming during spring break, and another shift coming when summer hits. Like, these are things that we can prepare for, and we know are going to happen. So it shouldn't derail us completely, because they're, while challenging and chaos, it's kind of expected chaos.
Yeah, I think on the same wavelength of that, of also knowing that like your body and your motivations and all of that are going to have that same sort of seasonal ebb and flow of, you're not always going to be like in the best shape of your life. Like, I think that I went wrong there for a while too, thinking of like, oh, I'm here, it's this forever now. And then the moment that it's not, because it's unsustainable to be in this level where I was overtraining. I was training 6-7 days a week. I was eating like immaculate to the point of just not having fun in other ways. Like, and no, I cannot have a beer. No, I will. I can have pizza once every 3 months. Like, just not having this, like, and which was fine because that made me happy in the moment. But then the moment it doesn't, and that season changes, for me, it automatically went back into that mindset of like, you suck. Like, you're gaining weight. You don't look this way. You're a failure. Especially, I think for me personally, of like, oh, well, you talk about this all the time now. This is your lifestyle, and you're being judged now, but you can't even keep it up. Or and I still have this fear, and this is something I work through, of like, because I do talk about health and wellness and stuff all the time. People meet me and be like, "Oh, she's fatter than I thought she was going to be," or like stuff like that. Of like, you just hear those things in your head instead of having this be like, that's life. Like, you're getting older every day. Things change, circumstances change, and you can't keep what you can know what works in that moment, but the moment that moment is over, it doesn't work for you anymore. You have to like keep moving and moving on. And I feel like a lot of us hold on to like, well, at this point in time, I was in the best shape of my life, and all A, B, and C happened, and now I need to make all of those things happen again in order to be there again. And I think we get really hung up on, this is what worked once. I have to try to just shoehorn this back into my life, even though you're in a different season.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Like, one of the things that helps people stick with it long term is also kind of realistic expectations for their goals, and then realistic expectations of what they can do in their current stage. Right? If you're brand new to lifting, you've never done fitness before, if you're thinking you're going to go from not doing anything to meal prepping every day and going to the gym 6 days a week and doing cardio every day, like, that's not going to happen. And then we also compare ourselves to our past self. We're always like, I look great when I was 20. Like, well, no shit. We were 20. We were in school with barely any jobs and no responsibilities. So, of course, we all look better with our shirts off at 20. Like, those are all kind of not realistic expectations anymore, or realistic placements for where we are. So kind of these small sustainable pieces, and then kind of realizing where we are makes a huge difference. Of, if you have 3 kids and you have a job and you have all these things and all these other responsibilities pulling you back and forth, be aware of that before you start setting goals and expectations for yourself.
Yeah, because
they have to be realistic.
Yeah, and I feel like I get into this loop too, because I am so much of an overachiever. Of like, you have all that other stuff going on, but like, well, I want this too, and then you just overextend yourself. And if you, already exercise specifically is a stress on the body, and if you're already going through so much other stress, and you're adding more stress, you're probably not going to get the benefits out of that you're looking for.
Correct. We were talking before we started recording with your new role at the Y. Like, there's all these things that you're doing. You have a mountain of different obligations, and you're like, when I don't have time to work out as much. Like, yeah, that's a normal shift.
Yeah.
That now has to be navigated, and because you have an anchor of that, like, you're doing a good job with it, and we have to celebrate those little wins at the same time.
Yeah,
and
and that's
realize that wins are wins, and they should be celebrated.
for sure. And giving yourself grace, which is what I've been going through too. Of like, hey, I'm going through transitions. I'm learning, a new rhythm. I mean, I've been in this role a month and a half now, so it's like that you zoom out, and it's like that's not much time at all.
No time at all,
right? To build something. But then I know for me too, where it's like, again, I'm not being super hard on myself, but I also realize I'm like, but movement and the community with movement, again, because I'm craving that right now in this season. That sounds very fulfilling to me rather than just being alone. That I'm like, those things that are important to me, and they fill my cup, and they give me joy, and they make me feel good in my own skin, and those things are important. So that needs to be on the priority list, but it needs to be on the priority list in a time that makes sense, where they fit, and saying like, I need this, I'm going to cram it into this schedule, and now it's just going to just add to more chaos where I don't get all of those benefits out of it. So it's like, I think it's important to have that there, but know to be like, oh, okay, well, I can't sleep on it. I can't just constantly live in, well, I have too many other things going on, it's not there. I think that self-awareness piece of like, where am I at really? And then keep coming back to that, even if it's just like weekly, and tuning back in of like, okay, where are things now? How can I reevaluate, which is actually where I am right now of like, okay, I'm getting a better understanding of the role. I'm understanding more of the rhythms. I can understand where my time and space is. So I'm like, okay, now this other movement community piece is important to me. Now is the time where I can really sit and think of like, how do I plan and integrate this into a routine for me, instead of like, I'm going to just throw one-off things on there and have like, again, I'm going to do it 5 days a week. Like, how can I realistically work this into my life? And those kinds of transitions are hard too, because it's work on a different level.
100% it is. And that's where, and you hit the nail on the head too when you said like, when you zoom out, like when we're in the weeds of it, it feels like we're drowning. It feels like we're lost forever. And then when you zoom out, you're like, oh, I've only been doing this for a month, and I've been alive for how many months, and we'll be alive for how many more months? Like, it's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. And I think that's also important to realize. And you're navigating it really well, and it takes practice to navigate those things that way.
Yeah, and speaking of zooming out too, just again, using my own personal journey, which you feel free to jump in here with yours, of like, again, getting in the weeds of like, oh, I've gained weight, I don't feel good in my skin, and I look back to when I was at my thinnest, and I should be doing here, of zoom out to a former life of mine of like, what am I complaining about? If I saw this version of me a decade ago, I'd been like, girl, you are living your dream life. Like, what are you complaining about? But you have to like zoom out of that and be like, why are you hating on your body right now? This is a body that you didn't even think that you could have ever achieved. And slow your roll, calm down, have some gratitude, quit bitching.
That's we lose that gratitude piece, and as wooey as it seems sometimes, like, that really does help center us. I look at the same thing. I was the scrawny kid getting picked on. Now I'm like a buffer version of a gigantic nerd, and I like it, and it's fun for me. I'm like, oh, my arms are still big, and I can still pick up this weight. Nowhere near as strong as I was 10 years ago, but I also now have multiple employees that we're paying. I have a full client list. I teach. I do all these other things with it. And I'm like, oh, you're doing all right.
Yeah.
You're good. We got it. And there'll be times we'll slow down, and I'll lift a little bit harder and I'll do more, but it's just ebb and flow. And that's the hardest part. We don't recognize that ebb and flows are natural, and that they should happen, and it is okay to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's just life. I just, I had a meeting with somebody earlier this week who was talking about how their life was not in the space where they planned. Like, I had this idea of what my life was going to be, and somehow I'm in Ohio now. And like, this is, I'm a completely different trajectory. And he recommended I read the book, Who Moved My Cheese. Have you read this book?
No.
It's really good. It's really short. It took me a half hour to read it. You can borrow my copy if you want. And it's I guess it's meant to, a lot of businesses hand it out and read it. And it's all about dealing with change. and how you just kind of roll with the changes and how that can help you with things. So there's like 4 characters in this book. 2 are little mice, Sniff and Scurry, and 2 are like 2 little people that are the size of the mice called Hem and Haw, and how they all handle change. Like they're all in a maze looking for cheese, and how they all kind of have their own rhythms of dealing with the change of when the cheese disappears. And it's a really good, understandable like look of like how we all have choices and how we deal with change, and how you can also change your attitude on change in part of the journey. And I mean, it goes through every aspect of life because change is inevitable. That's the one, whatever Benjamin Franklin said after he got all those STDs.
Small price to pay for some wisdom.
Right? But yeah, I thought it was a great little book that kind of like illustrates that of like, change is inevitable. You're going to have to deal with change no matter what that is, and especially changes in your body, changes in your attitude. And I think that's ultimately what it is. And even I think specifically going to the gym and movement and using it in there of like, what you did today is not going to last tomorrow. And you have to keep an eye out for signs of things are changing. Oh, my knees are starting. Like that was for me. I did these workouts that I really loved. And my knee was just like coming out from underneath me, and I was falling down and crying and getting back up and just continuing to work out. And like, I'm seeing these signs that changes. I need to change this up. This isn't working anymore. And I just blew right past it because I wanted to stay there. And then it gets to the point where you can't do it anymore. So it's like keeping an eye out and listening to changes of like, hey, I liked working out and doing body splits for a long time and working out by myself, and that's fine. But now I kind of want to work out with other people, and that's a change that, you know, I couldn't have predicted, but I'm kind of trying to go with the flow with what works for me. And I feel like, you know, I guess we keep coming back to this point is we all just fight that so much.
Yeah, we fight it, and we tend to live in like a very reactive state versus, you know, and we talk about like that seasonal ebb and flow and realizing that they are going to happen. They're inevitable. So do a little bit of planning for it. Like, don't let you react to the schedule changes. Like, look out a week ahead. And then same with, like, you're doing something with the knee. Like, we're not going to do the same things all the time. We're going to have to make adjustments to our workouts and to our capabilities as we age and as our life circumstances changes. And those are those things where being proactive with it and listening to our bodies and listening to the situations we're in and being aware of them will, again, allow us to do it forever and have so much more enjoyment with it rather than fighting it.
Well, and
we just fight ourselves.
It's scary, but it's like also, again, if you choose to be scared, which I spend a lot of time of like trying different exercises of like, I'm going to go in there and everybody's going to make fun of me. And I feel like, just like you talking about, like, I'm going to try bodybuilding and jujitsu and all these different things to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Because I found that, like, when I just kind of stayed there and scared, I didn't really do anything. But, like, once I'm just kind of got past that first scary point, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I've tried all these different things, which I'm trying a new thing. In a couple of weeks, I'm taking a pole dance fitness class.
Oh, fun.
You know, just get some side hustle money. And but I'm like, it scares me here. Hey, throw them dollars my way. Of like, it scares me because it's gonna be hard. That is core work beyond core work, and I am not graceful. I do not have a strong core like most people, and I'm like, I'm probably gonna get banged up and bruised up, and it's not like I give off like sex kitten pole vibes. I give off like redneck vibes. I feel like, so I feel like I'm like, but I think it's intriguing and I want to try it, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to feel like nervous and shy, and I'm like, but I'm going to go and I'm going to, and who knows, like I could love it or I could be like, this isn't for me. And I've tried that with so many different things. Like I've tried bar classes and I'm like, I want to love it and I don't, and that's okay. And I've tried CrossFit and I'm like, I really love the community part of this. I want to love it, but I don't. But I've tried, I tried your, group personal training, and I thought I wasn't going to like it and I was afraid of it, and I really liked it. So it's like you have to go through that, push yourself through the change to kind of find what's new. And I think that's just life. You're going to have to consistently do that and not just do it once, and then you're going to be stuck in that rut forever too.
Yeah. You had to experiment. You had to be willing to experiment, to be willing to fail. And so much of us get stuck in this perfectionism of like, oh my God, I didn't eat a great lunch because they catered lunch at work. Fuck my week. It's done. I'm eating whatever I want.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that was a meal. And now we've lost 4 days versus a meal.
Yeah.
Same with like avoiding something because you're scared. Oh, you could have loved this. You could have made a new best friend. All of these things could have happened. But this perfectionism, fear, and avoidance and fighting ourselves again tends to hold us back from stuff.
Yeah, I do.
That people should experience.
It's so funny that this conversation went here, which I just love that we kind of just go wherever it takes us. Is
Wow.
that yeah? I was just like maybe a month or so ago writing out a list of thinking of like big scary changes that I've made and the consequences of them, because it's really scary to make big life change, which I've made a bunch. I've moved all over the country. I've changed careers, which is probably the biggest, scariest one I did for me, because I had a very, very deep love of radio for a lot of reasons. And to leave that career for something else was, I feel like if I could make that change, I can make any change happen, because that was probably the hardest one of my life so far anyway. And so I was making a list of like, when did I make really big, scary changes and what was the outcome from it? In every single one of them was positive. So it's not like that the transition was hard or putting myself in a scary place, but it was like it ultimately turned out well. Like a small example was when I lived one was just health and fitness journey anyway, where I'm like, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to see what happens if I start changing my habits. And I did lose friends along the way from that. And that part of it sucked. But I'm like, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. I wouldn't have met all of these amazing people in my life if I wouldn't have made a decision to make a change for my life that suited me for me. But like another like kind of like more, I guess frou-frou change, I guess, was like or thinking of something scary, is I really got like hiking as part of my fitness. I really like walking. And then I got into hiking because I moved to Oregon and it was just easy to hike, but no one wanted to go hiking with me. And so I'm like, well, I want to meet people. I want people that want to hike with me. And so I decided to join the Pacific Crest Trail volunteer group, which was like 3 hours away in the middle of California with no cell service. And I just sent an email and I'm like, can I do this weekend? And can I join the like trail crew to do trail maintenance? Cause I'm like, I'm probably going to meet somebody that likes hiking there. And I got in and I drove 3 hours to the middle of nowhere with no cell service and went camping essentially with 10 strangers and met one of my very best friends that way. And like, I met her and she, like my friend Jeanette. And from the moment that I got there, we're like, we are new besties. And I have gone on so many adventures and seen things and done things that I never would have done in my life because I met her. And I'm like, it started with this scary thing of like, I want to do this and I'm really going to have to like jump into a scary place because I feel like this is kind of what I want. And I'm like, but the payoff was amazing. And so I'm like, just trying to keep that in mind and making like different changes in my life of like, yeah, they're scary. Yeah, failures happen. But on the other side, at least in my experience, there's always just lots of like positives that come out of the people that I meet or the experiences that I have or how I feel about myself on the other side of like, I don't know. I think it's, again, zooming out and looking at those things instead of the moment of like, oh, do I really want to go take a swimming class? Like, oh, I'm going to have to get in a swimsuit and I don't want to do that. It's like, well, but what could come out of that? Like you could make the best friends of your life, or you could be like, I'm so good at swimming. I'm going to scuba dive now and I'm going to find hidden treasures in the Great Lakes or whatever random situation you find yourself in. So it's like, I don't know. That's just how I like to live my life anyway, though.
Those are those big things where you're right, because we have to have that growth mentality, which is, again, one of those, like, everybody shouts out about growth mentality, but it's really true. Like, you don't know until you experience these things. You have to put yourself out to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to fall on your face sometimes. And it doesn't matter, I think, what the initial, I guess, nudge to do something. Like, so when I started teaching, I did it completely selfishly for the business. I was like, I'm doing this solely because one, I know what the F I'm talking about, and I can teach people. I'm mildly charismatic. I said, I'm going to teach these kids. I'm going to get some good interns. I'm going to get some good employees. Like, that's all I'm doing this for. And I started doing it. I was like, oh, shit, this is a lot of fun. This is really fun. I actually enjoy this. And then I picked up at another school, taught the same class. And I was like, if I wasn't like it, it stretched me too thin. I had too much on my schedule at that point. I did not love the setting and that student population. So I was like, I'm not going to keep stretching myself too thin for this. I have to drop something. So that one was then dropped. But like, we don't know until we try things. Like, from small examples, like trying a new task or a job, like teaching, to driving across the country to camp with strangers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those are crazy things to do to people.
Yeah. I mean, the job that I just accepted, they're like, you're going to have 20 employees. I'm like, whoa, what?
I had any.
I'm going to be somebody's boss? Okay. I'm like, well, let's see what happens, which we're still seeing. Do you have anything on the horizon of that you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone?
We're actually moving. We're getting a bigger gym space in a couple months. So that is very scary for me right now. I didn't think it was going to be. And then once I put my name on the paper for the lease and everything, I was like, oh, this is a little scary. It's a lot bigger. All of our space you've been to the current space. It's kind of off the path a little bit. You can't really see us. This is a big storefront kind of place that's about 3 times the size of the current gym. And I was like, oh boy, we're going to figure this out. And then I kind of talked to one of my coaches, and I realized I haven't felt that in a while, which means I haven't been pushing myself. So I can handle this. I felt the same way every time I've done a competition type thing, every time I've signed a new lease for a gym. I felt that way, and I've made it through. So I'm like, I'll make it through, and if not, I'll figure something out along the way.
That's awesome.
Life will work out.
When are you hoping to open?
We'll hopefully be in there first week in November is our estimated first week in the new space.
Oh, man. You going to have a big grand opening party?
I am, and I actually thought about that when we were talking earlier. Before we started recording, we were talking about the party and everything. I was like, oh, shit, I got to talk to Amanda about, how I can organize something like that for, our first Saturday open kind of thing.
Oh, that'd be fun.
A little welcome party.
I can come wear my unicorn for you. Or my T-Rex or any of my other multitude of costumes.
We'll bring the T-Rex. Dinosaurs are cooler.
Okay.
And then that works. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I always have such a great time chatting with you, and I feel like we could go on forever, but this feels like a good ending point.
Same season, I agree.
So for people that are interested in working out at Trilogy, until you're in the new location, what's the best way to reach out to you, best way to find you, etc.?
Yeah, we do a lot of silly stuff on Instagram. It says Trilogy Fitness Systems. And then our website is trilogyfitnesssystems.com. I like talking to people on Instagram and stuff. So people have questions, just send me questions. I like to use that for content and talk to people and do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So yeah, Instagram, website, those are the easiest ways.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much.
Dude, thank you for having me again.
AmandaValentineBites.com